episode of Gogopreneur, I have the privilege of interviewing Lizzie Ens. I accidentally started following her, and then I just couldn't stop watching all of her videos about the Amish culture. And in Gogopreneur, I feel like there's so many different type of entrepreneurs in this world. So that's what I want to do. I want to interview all of these different types of entrepreneurs and see how we all fit into this puzzle of entrepreneurship. So today I want to interview Lizzie to find out, how do you go from the Amish culture to be a very successful entrepreneur? And today she's taking advantage of what she learned in her culture and she turned it into a business. So today she's a dietitian, she is a nutritional advisor, she's a health coach, and I wanted to have her on here to walk through the process of how do you go from an Amish life to be a very successful entrepreneur with hundreds of thousands of followers and using social media as your avenue, I guess. I can't remember the word in English, as your path. Let's do that, right? Because if you think about it, in the Amish life, like there's not even cell phones, let alone to use social media for your advantage. So I'm super excited to figure out, how does her brain work? I always talk about learning things and unlearning things, and sometimes it's more important to unlearn things than it is to learn things. So I want to see, how did that happen in Lizzie's life? So let's get to know her. Lizzie, come on in.
Welcome to Gogopreneur, where Gogo Bethke, your host, interviews badass rock star entrepreneurs of the world, figuring out who they are, how they got to where they're at, and the lessons they learned along the way, so you can learn those lessons and turn it into money. Let's go get them.
Hello, my Gogopreneur friends. Are you frustrated by not knowing how to reach that 7-digit mark in your business? Maybe kind of like stuck in the progress? I want to invite you to GoGetEmCommunity.com. It is your last stop to becoming a 7-digit entrepreneur. You will have access to monthly live calls with me and industry experts and Q&As at the end. Every training video is recorded. We have a massive knowledge library. You will have access to my team. Tuesdays for Tech Tuesdays and Wednesdays, you have direct access to my VAs. Ask them absolutely anything, how we have built everything in all of my businesses. You will have access to a private Facebook group and a private Facebook chat. And that's where I communicate directly with all of our members. That's where I share my thoughts, my ideas, a new app, books that I'm reading, videos that I'm watching, anything I'm feeding to my brain, any systems that I'm implementing into my business. That is your direct access to me, your direct access to each other and like-minded entrepreneurs in the industry. Join us today to transform your business. Go to GoGetEmCommunity.com. Lizzie, I am so excited that you're here today. I want to cover so much. We have an hour together, hopefully, so let's get to it, right? But I want to cover so much because I find your existence in the entrepreneurial world so different. Like, you had to go through you had to unlearn, so many things to be who you are today. So first of all, let's start at the very end. Who is Lizzie today? And then I want to ask all kinds of questions. How did you get to be Lizzie Ens today? Okay, so if you and me met at a bar, not in an Amish bar, but in a bar, because those things don't exist, right? If we met, I always joke and say, if you met at an airport bar and you introduced yourself and I'm like, hey, who are you? What would you say?
Well, first of all, I'm former Amish is one of the things that I would say, because that is a thing that really gets people in and it like connects them. Now, I don't always lead with that, but if I met you at a bar, I'd be like, yeah, I'm an author. I have a published book. I'm a board certified health and wellness coach. But those are just titles. Like, who I am is like an advocate for people. And I want people to have self-sufficiency and learn how to be more sustainable and healthier. And also, I'm a mom to an amazing 5-year-old. And so one of the things that I like to tell people and also practice myself is like, your titles are just part of your life and who you are, but it doesn't define you. There's so much more to you and myself than just the title. So who are you aside from that? I'm someone that loves to travel, have fun, and laugh, and go do all kinds of spontaneous things. So
how did that start in the Amish world? So where were you born and raised, and how long did you stay there, and what made you leave?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in the strictest order of the Amish community that you can grow up in. So there's many different sects of the Amish community, but I I was born and raised in the strictest order you can grow up in, which is you don't have any indoor plumbing. There's no running water. There's no electricity. There's no, basically indoor plumbing means like you don't have a bathroom in the house. If you have to go to the bathroom, you have to go to the outhouse outside, like completely different.
That's how I spent all the summer. So I'm originally from Transylvania, Romania. And even though I was raised in a city in a high rise, every summer we spent in the villages with my grandparents, right? And so they had running water, but there was no bathroom inside, and there was no hot water. There was no water heater. We heated everything on a stove, right? They used a wood, not a gas stove, a wood stove. And every room had its own wood stove and all of that. So I feel like I've been Amish a little bit.
You're like living off the land.
Yeah, exactly. Everything. My grandparents grew everything in the backyard. Besides like salami and even sugar. Like they traded beets for sugar. They traded corn for corn flour or cornmeal. Right? They traded wheat for wheat flour. Like they made their own stuff. Right? All the fruits and vegetables came from the backyard. We canned everything for the summer. I wish I paid more attention to how to actually do it, because not that good today. I have to call my mom for everything, right? But like I remember when I met my husband, like the way I drink tea is we would go to the forest or the fields, and then we would collect the herbs and we would take it home and we would dry them, right? And then we would boil them in water, and that's your tea. And I met an American, totally American, like as American as someone can be, right? So the first time I'm making tea, which is like my loose herbs, and I'm throwing it in a pot with hot water, my husband looks at me and he goes, "Is that legal?" And I was like, "You have never made tea in your life?" Like for him, tea is this motion of a little thing in your bag, right? And then you dip it into hot water. And I was like, why? Do you realize what's in the bag? In the bag is the herbs. I'm just doing it without the bag. Like I went and collected my herbs. I collect my elderflowers every single summer. Like I did a video recently. We moved to Florida and I was like, oh my gosh, that's an elderflower bush, right? Because it looks different. Everything looks different in Florida. So I was on the side of the highway, literally made my husband pull over, and I'm there like, with my grocery bag.
Yeah, like you're not gonna get any better tea, because a lot of the tea bags have chemicals in them. So like we grew our own tea, and then there's like wild stuff too. Now I want to go plant my own tea garden now. I'm like,
so I literally have my mint, and it grows wild, right? So I have to dig up a portion of every year because it just grows wild. But I just cut it, and I'm literally drying mint right now for the winter upstairs. So I feel like I have a little bit of your Amish culture. It just wasn't called Amish. It was just called, Hungarian.
Right. You probably didn't have to live with all the rules of the church and have to dress.
No. So that's actually the very first video that the internet introduced you to me with, was when you were explaining your Amish outfit of all of the pins and all of that. And I was like, how do you not poke yourself?
You do.
Like, how does the hanky-panky happen? And I'm like, okay, hold on, honey, let me pull out all my needles before they poke me. Like I can't even. So I have so many questions for you. Okay, so you were born and raised in a very, very strict Amish culture. How long did you live there?
19 years of my life.
What made you even think to leave?
Because I started thinking about leaving when I was in my early teens. Because I just felt something in my spirit, and my soul was like drawing me somewhere else. And I'm a visionary. Like if I don't see and feel myself somewhere, I don't want to be there. And so for me, the women in the community are very much like, hey, we're going to get married and have lots of babies and be a homemaker, right? And I could never see that. Like my mom had 19 kids. And so
she probably doesn't even know you left yet. Just kidding.
Oh, that's funny. I've never had anybody say that. That's so funny. No.
Hopefully she realized you left, right? I know she did, because I watch your videos and I know that they no longer talk to you, even though you don't get to that.
Yeah. But no, like I just always had this draw, and I question everything. So I really gave my mom a run for her money, because I would ask her all kinds of stuff, like, why is it that women can't cut their hair? And her answer was always, well, that's just the way it is. And I would ask all these questions, like, why these rules? Like, I literally would think I think to myself, there is no way that the church can come up with more rules that we have to follow. And then sure enough, they did. And I'm like, how is this possible? And so I so clearly remember this one conversation I had with my mom. There was a lady so we sold a lot of things from our farm, like fresh
Like
eggs.
strawberries. I watched
Yeah,
that video
strawberries.
recently. Yeah.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. And there was this one customer that would come to our house, and she was a believer in God. She believed in Jesus, and she would talk about it freely. Like she talked about her faith. And the Amish believe that if you're born in, not all of them now, but this is what it was when I lived there in my community. And I'm sure there's still some that believe this way, but not, I don't believe that everybody still believes this way. However, when I was there, they believe that if you're born in the Amish community, this is where you're supposed to be. And if you leave, there's no way that you would ever get to heaven because you've deserted everything that the church has taught you, and you walked away from your faith and where God placed you, all of those things. And they also believe that Amish were the only people that would go to heaven. And I thought to myself,
Well, they have to keep you somehow in that
right.
culture, right?
But I remember going, why in the world would God create so many other people only to not have them be able to get to heaven? And then they believe that if you cut your hair, you're, as a woman, you most certainly can't get to heaven because that's against the Bible.
This is the key that's going to open heaven's pearly gates.
Right? Yeah. Like,
I know. I did the same thing. Like I have so many questions to God, right? Like even just so you look at the Bible, the Old Testament says, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, right? New Testament says if you throw stone, I throw bread. I'm like, okay, which one am I supposed to be nice, or am I supposed to take the knife out of my back and throw it back into yours, right?
Yeah.
Also, if like Adam and Eve had two sons, then what happened?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a lot of those.
I have questions. Like I just like you, I like to understand things. And if if the math is not mathing, then I have questions.
Yeah. And it's good to have questions. If you don't have questions, you're not growing. So, but I to move forward with that, I asked my mom one time, this lady that was talking about God and her faith, she had really short hair. And so one day she left, and I asked my mom, I said, so even though she believes in God and she's an amazing person, but just because she cuts her hair, she can't go to heaven? And my mom's answer was, well, that's just the way it is. And I said, heck no. I said, I'm not on board with that belief. I cannot believe that. There's no way that that's true. And so I was a rebel. I pushed a lot of the boundaries. I couldn't stick with the rules. And there's a reason for that. Usually people that have a rebel spirit and they question things and they push the boundaries, it's also because we're meant to do greater and bigger things in life. And we're here to break the chains of the things that we have been told and taught that we need to follow. And for me, I actually became a member of the church, of the Amish church. And when you become a member of the Amish church, it means that you got baptized into the church. And now the whole entire congregation has more control over you.
At what age do you get baptized? Is it a choice, or do you get baptized early? Like your parents make that decision, or do you make that decision?
It's expected of you to do between the ages of 18 and 19. They do say, if you're not ready, don't do it. But then if you don't do it, they think you're a bad person because you're not doing the expected thing. And so I have a twin sister, and her and I, when we were 17, we were the first ones in our entire family to run away, and we ran away for 2 days. And I thought at that point in time, that was my way out. Like, I was all the way out. I'm good. I'm never going back. Well, we were really close, and she got to this point on day 2 that we were staying at a cousin's house that had left a few years before. And one of our brothers that was still Amish found out where we were at. He went to the neighbors, he called the house, and my twin picked up the phone in the kitchen, and I picked up the phone in the living room. This is when home phones were a thing.
Yeah.
Still, I don't know, are they still a thing? And she picked up, same time I did. She starts talking, and I don't say a word. I just hear what their conversation is. So I'm listening to their entire conversation. And at the end of that conversation, she tells my brother that they need to come pick us up that night. My heart just sank because I was like, I have to go back if she goes back. Like, I can't, I have to follow her. And so we went back that night, and the following day, I told her that there's no way I'm staying. I'm going to leave again one day. And she was like, yeah, I'm leaving too. I don't want to stay here. Well, she's still there. She got married, and she has 11 kids now. And I left. So fast forward 2 years later, the two of us had become members of the church, and we got baptized in the church. And then 6 months after that is when I left.
So how did you even know, I guess, the outside world the first time when you left? Like you said you had cousins, but did you get to see them? Because my understanding is when someone leaves the church, like they're dead to the church, right? So did you have some sort of a relationship with them, or how did you even know where to go?
Yeah, so it really, really varies. So for some people, the family treats them as if they're dead to them. They're not allowed to come home to see the family. There's no connection. Their rule is unless you come home to stay home, you're not allowed here. My family isn't like that, and my cousins who had left, their family wasn't like that either. So on occasion, I would run into them somewhere. I didn't, not very often, but also, like, we didn't live on compounds. Like, sometimes people think that Amish live on compounds and you're like fenced in and you have no access to the outside world. That's not true. We lived on an 80-acre farm, and our closest Amish neighbors were 3 miles away. Everybody else around us were non-Amish people. And so I would see a lot.
But you didn't go to school, correct? You were homeschooled? Or
Well,
Amish schooled?
we went Amish school. Yeah, I call it Amish school. So we walked 3 miles to a one-room schoolhouse every morning, and there was maybe 15 to 20 kids in that school, and you get taught 1st through 8th grade, and the teachers are people from the same community. So it is state regulated, so you do have to take tests and graduate, and you get a graduation card. And that graduation card was very, very important because that was a form of identification that I needed in order to get a social security number after I left.
Oh, because you didn't have a social security number.
No. Mm-mm.
So, because you guys are not born in a hospital, so there's no record that you exist.
So they get birth certificates, but
okay.
you can decline a social security number. So they're not part of the government system. However, you still get a birth certificate.
Okay,
so most of us were born at a birthing center. She had a doctor and a midwife, and only one so my mom had 3 sets of twins, and one set of the twins was born in a hospital. Other than that, they were born in a birthing center. So they get birth certificates, but they decline the social security number.
And why is that?
I think that they believe that it's part of the government, and they don't want to have anything to do with the government. They don't collect social security. They don't do any of that. They don't pay for insurance. They don't, if for example, like my dad got killed in an accident when I was 13 by a drunk driver, and technically they should have taken the guy to court. They don't go to court. They don't do any of that.
So is your mom taking care of the whole homestead and all the kids by herself?
She did. Yeah. So when my dad got killed at 45, my mom was left. My oldest sister was married at the time. And so there was 18 of us still at home. Now, the thing is I have 6 older brothers, and I was 13 at the time. So from the age of 13 up to like 20, where I had 6 older brothers in that age range. So they were old enough to like kind of take over the farming and stuff. But it was still a lot on my mom because she still had to like raise a lot of kids. And she pretty much did that on her own.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you leave at 19 for the second time, right? Why and where do you go, and how did your outside life became?
Yeah. So I knew from the time that my twin and I had tried to run away and then went back, from that time, so it was 2 years from that moment to then when I was leaving. So in that time frame of those 2 years, I obviously always knew that at some point I was going to leave. However, in that time frame, I got baptized into the Amish church, got to learn more about how the church on the back end actually works. I also started dating a guy from New York. So
How?
people are like, how did you meet a guy in New York? And I'm like,
how did you communicate with no phone is what I want to know.
Yeah. No, you write letters. We wrote letters to each other.
I forgot about that. I forgot about that age that you can actually handwrite letters.
No, I always I'm like, we were pen pals. So a brother of mine got married to this girl in New York, and we all went up there for the wedding. And then I got introduced to this boy. And
he was Amish too?
Yeah, he was Amish too. Yeah. You're not allowed to date outside of the Amish community. And we started dating, but the thing is we had a long distance relationship, so we had to write letters to each other. And then we maybe saw each other twice a year, if that. Like his dad was really, really strict, so he wouldn't let him come see me very often.
And they don't necessarily get on an airplane, correct?
No, we did either charter bus or Greyhound bus to go from state to state.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're not going to go horse and buggy from Ohio to New York.
That's what I was like, so how long is that ride?
For the Greyhound?
No, I'm just kidding. If you were doing it on a horse and buggy, right? Maybe that's why you saw each other every 6 months, because it took you 5 months to get there.
5 months to get there, exactly. You have to stop and feed the horse and all that. But yeah, exactly. So by the time that I left, so it was really, really interesting because I actually left with my boyfriend at the time. So the day that I left, I was not at home where I grew up. I was at my oldest sister's house and working as a hired maid, because that's something that we did as teenage girls. We worked as hired maids for other Amish families, and she just had a baby, so I was there helping her out. And it was really, really interesting because for the month leading up to the time that I left, I knew that something massive was coming, but I didn't know what it was. I knew there was a big shift coming. I could feel it in my heart, my soul, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. And so it was my turn to deliver a letter to my boyfriend. And so I walked up, it was noon. I walked up to the mailbox to deliver the letter. And when I opened the mailbox to put the letter into the mailbox, there was a note in there, and it didn't have an address on it, but it had my name on it. And I could tell that it was my boyfriend's handwriting. And I was like, how did this note get in here? There's no address, but it's his handwriting. So I ripped the note open, and it said, he had wrote a note to me, and it said, my sister and her boyfriend and we ran away from the Amish community. We drove down with a mutual friend of ours from New York yesterday. And we're going to come by tonight at 10 o'clock. If you want to leave, we'll be here and we'll meet you and we can leave together. If you don't want to leave, I'll come by later and we can talk about it. And I always joke because I'm like,
what are the chances that you were, not you, but whoever's house you were at, would
but I'm the one that
not you,
know, right? Like,
that's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? So I read that note, and as soon as I'm done reading the note, I literally, within 2 seconds, I snap my fingers and I say I'm leaving. Because I knew at that moment in time, this was the perfect time for me to do it. And so I go back down and I'm trying to figure out, like, how am I going to prepare? Like, how do I leave? How do I make sure nobody knows I'm going to leave? Do I tell anybody that I'm leaving? Because there was a younger sister of mine there visiting that day. And I was like, do I tell her? Do I mention it? And I was like, I cannot mention it. So I remember when she was leaving, I said some words where I was like, because we didn't use the word I love you. Like, that wasn't something like, so
I'm telling you, I was raised Amish. I'm just kidding.
and there was
That
like,
didn't happen in my culture either.
in a roundabout way, I was kind of like telling her like I love her, and then she left, and I waited until nighttime, and every night everybody would meet in the living room to do prayer and then go to bed. And so went through all of that, and then I went upstairs. I was the only one that was sleeping on the third floor, and I pretended like I was going to bed. But as soon as I got into my room, I like ripped my covering off. I let my hair down, and then I wrote a note to my family, and I said, "This has nothing to do with anybody here, but I have to go." And because I wanted them to know, and which is also pretty normal for someone that leaves from that community to just leave and not tell anybody and then leave a note, like they leave a little note and whatever. So I did that, and I already saw that my boyfriend was up on a hill, like like flashing with his flashlight. So I took my flashlight and I like lit back, and I was like, I'm coming. Like that was like signaling.
Yeah.
But instead of going down, walking back downstairs, pretending like I have to go to the outhouse, I was like, I can't do that because they may know what I'm up to, number one. And number two, they'll hear that I never come back in. So instead of doing that, I walk over to the window that's on the third floor, and I climb out onto the roof. And I
Jump from the roof to the second floor?
Yeah. So I sit there. Here's the thing. I sit there for probably 30 minutes contemplating how I'm going to jump off this roof. And also at the same time, I'm remembering that in 6 months, my twin is getting married. And if I jump off this roof now, I won't be at her wedding. So I had a decision to make. Do I leave now, or do I wait 6 more months to make sure I can be at her wedding and then leave? And my heart and my intuition told me I would never leave if I did that. So I finally took a deep breath, and I jumped off the 15-foot roof to run away.
And you didn't break an ankle, and
I didn't break any bones. No, I was so scared because while I was sitting there, I was thinking, like, if I jump and I break a bone, I will look like the biggest fool ever, and the Amish community is going to go, that's what you get. That's God's punishing you. You broke a bone because you were trying to run away. But here's something that I learned growing up on the farm is cats, it doesn't matter how
they
far
just land on 4 feet.
they like pounce and they let every limb in their body loose. So they don't, and so I was like, well, I'm just gonna be a cat.
And then you jumped, you go uphill, your boyfriend's waiting for you, and where did you guys go?
Yeah, so I run up the hill, they're waiting, I get in the truck, and our friend that had left a couple years before, we used to hang out when everybody was still Amish, they had a place that was 10 minutes away, if that, and we all went to his place, and we just hung out there, like, literally all night. Like, I don't think anybody slept. We were just watching TV, listening to music, doing all the things we weren't allowed to do.
You were not allowed to do.
Yeah.
You get paid for the hour what you bring to the hour. Or in other words, the fastest way for you to earn more is by learning more. Go Get 'em is your chance to learn from those who have walked the talk. Gogo invites all of the top performers in the industry to guide you through your success journey. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. The roadmap is already laid out. If you haven't figured out how to make money in your sleep yet, you're not running a business. You're stuck in a job. Join Go Get 'em to learn how to earn passively and have your money doing all the heavy lifting so you don't have to.
To join Go Get 'em community, just go to www.gogetemcommunity.com and we will see you inside of our most amazing entrepreneurial community ever.
So so where were you born and raised? Like what part of the country?
I was in Ohio.
Ohio. And where do you live today?
In Phoenix, Arizona.
Oh, so you're far.
Yeah.
You're far. So do you get to see your family today?
So yeah. I go home and I see my mom about once or twice a year. It just really depends.
Oh, that's awesome. So you still get to have a relationship with them. And your twin?
My twin's still Amish. She's married. I haven't seen her in over 11 years.
She doesn't talk to you?
Well, she moved to a different part of of Ohio. And so she's not really close to my mom. And I used to go visit her in the first few years after I left. She got married. And I would go visit her and her husband. And then they started having kids. And the last time that that I went to visit them, her husband told me that I'm never allowed to come back. So I was like, okay, wish granted, like whatever, like if that's what you want. But you know what's interesting is because I was a member of the church, I am shunned by the church. So technically, my mom shouldn't be having any kind of like communication with me or anything like that. And I have 3 younger siblings that also left, and none of them are shunned. And she treats them quite different than what she treats me. So she's literally scared. Just in the recent weeks, I have noticed that she's actually still scared of the church. And if the church finds out that she's allowing me to come home and visit, she's afraid that the church will come after her.
Yeah.
And yet she has no fear with that with my younger siblings.
Because they were not officially baptized into the church.
Yeah, they were not baptized in the church. And it's a very interesting thing to navigate through in terms of, okay, because my younger siblings don't get it. Like they don't understand.
So where are your younger siblings at?
They're all in Ohio.
They are, okay. They stayed close. How did you end up in Arizona?
Ohio couldn't handle me anymore. I was sick of it. I was like, I need to get out of here. So I lived in like the hub of Amish country at some point, and everybody knew everybody, and I was like, I can't be here anymore. I cannot, grow and do what I want to do in business. I have an entrepreneur spirit. I want to like learn and grow and evolve. And one of the things that happened after I left the Amish communities, there's a massive culture shock, and I was incredibly shy. I was afraid to tell people where I was from because I didn't want people to think that I was stupid, that I didn't, know anything. I allowed my voice to be suppressed. My voice was suppressed as an Amish woman, and I allowed my voice to be suppressed after I left because I was afraid of what people would think. And so but one of the things that I started doing after I left is a lot of times people that leave the Amish community, they like to kind of surround themselves with other former Amish people because it's comfortable and it's what they know. And not everybody's like that, but I started to see that a lot. And I was like, I can't only hang out with former Amish people because they can't teach me what I want to learn in this life. I want to be around other people that didn't grow up in the Amish community so I can learn. And so I started to sort of distance myself a little bit and say, I need new friends. I need new people. And I started to surround myself with other people that didn't grow up in the Amish community, which was a very, very difficult and hard thing to do. Because here's the thing. When you go from being in such a sheltered, like culture, atmosphere, community, whatever it is, and you break away from that and you start hanging out with people that they're lived in the modern world. They know, cultural things. We didn't learn history. We didn't learn science. We weren't taught any of those things. And so I would find myself in conversations with people that I loved, and they would be having conversations about stuff, and I'd pretend like I knew what they were talking about because I just wanted to feel like I was like a part of something. And so I did that for a while. And then, moving out of Amish country and going across the country into the West Coast was honestly like the best thing that ever happened to me. Because,
but why did you pick Arizona? Did you know someone there?
No. I knew one person here.
Really?
And so at the time, I was newly married, and my former in-laws, they lived in California. And we wanted to go closer to them, but we were like, we're moving to California. But I wanted to go where it's warm because I didn't like all the cold.
Yeah.
So at the time, Phoenix was actually one of the places in a warm climate that was the closest affordability city to where we were living at. It was still like a massive increase in cost of living, but it was the closest. Like if we went to California or Florida or any of those places, the cost of living exponentially went up. And so I was like, well, the desert sounds nice. I've never been there, but like, let's go check it out. So we checked it out for 5 days in January, and it rained 3 days out out of the 5 days.
It's the only rain they got that year.
I was like, that's fine. I'll still move there.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. Like we moved out west across the country, and I was like, best thing that I ever did.
That's awesome. So then how did you become an entrepreneur? How did you, because I feel so much still of your Amish culture that you kept, right? And then you pretty much turned it into entrepreneurship as I see looking into your life. Like there's so many things that you were like, same in mine, right? So many things that because I was raised like that, now I live my life. Like there's good and bad in everything, right? Like the good parts I feel like you kept and turned it into business. And today you advise people of how to have a healthy lifestyle because of how you learned how to eat and cook and grow your food and, you know, not eat things out of a box and those kind of things process. So how did you always know you're going to be an entrepreneur? Did you have, as I like to call them, real jobs before? Like I call it like real job, like even though I have like 19 jobs right now, right? And I get paid very, very well. I own all of the companies, right, that I work for, but I don't consider them a real job because I love what I do, so it doesn't feel like work, right? Where in the past,
you're being creative.
Yeah, I call a job where I had to do things for money. So now I'm not doing it for money. I'm doing it because I love it. Money is the byproduct of it. So did you have real jobs before, and when did you realize that you're going to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I did. I did have real jobs. I had various jobs. I got a job as a dishwasher 2 days at a restaurant 2 days after I left the Amish community, which is crazy. So I had that, and then I had various other ones. The main one that I had when I still lived in Ohio, I worked at a nursing home as a certified nurse's aide, and that's when I went and got my GED while I was there. And while I was studying for my GED, nobody had ever asked this in my entire life. But my GED teacher asked me, and she goes, Lizzie, what do you want to do with your life? Like, what do you want to do when you grow up, basically? And I was like, I don't know. Nobody's ever asked me this question before. And she's like, do you want to go to college? Is there something additional that you want to study? And here's the crazy thing. Never studied history, never studied science, never even heard a thing about algebra, didn't know what an essay was. So when she was like, write an essay, I was like, I don't know what an essay is. And then she told me what I needed to do. And I was like, oh, so what you need me to do is literally just think of something and write it on paper? What? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And so I had to teach myself how to do that. And by the end of my GED graduation, I graduated on the first go around, and I still to this day I'm like, I still don't understand algebra. I don't know how I did that, but she gave me the honors student because she saw like how hard I worked, and I actually like made it. And she's like, you need to like study. You need to continue on in whatever passion. And while I was studying for my GED, I was still working at the nursing home. And I remember so clearly one day I was in a patient's room, and I had my back turned towards the TV. And I'm thinking, I'm like, what do I want to do? Like, people have been telling me, like, you need to go to nursing school. And I was like, nah, I don't think nursing school is for me. And an ad came on the TV, and they were talking about nutrition, like nutrition for your body. And I don't know what was said. I just know that's what it was. And I literally like flipped around. It was like that moment when I was at the mailbox, like snapping my finger and saying, this is my moment of leaving. The same thing happened in that room. I turned around, I looked at the TV, I pointed at the TV, and I said, that's what I'm going to do one day. So I knew at that point in time that going into health and fitness, whatever road that takes me on, that's what my passion was. So I completed that, and then I didn't study anything else until we moved to Arizona. Right after we moved to Arizona, I signed up and went to personal training school and got certified as a trainer. I started working as a trainer, and I was like, this is my dream job. And about 2 months in, I was like, this is not my dream job. There's so much more to this than this. And I realized that like health and what we put into our body matters so much. And that is really where the bread and butter is. And so I went back to school the following year, and I just studied holistic health. And I worked at that training gym for 6 years. But while I was there, I studied and studied and studied. And then when the year 2020 happened, like I knew for a few years that I was supposed to have my own business, but I was like, I don't know how to do it. Like, I don't know what to do. How would I even do that? And 2020 happened. And it was right around that time that God was like, it's your time. It's time that you like go out on your own. So that was in the summer, and I committed to that. And so there's actually, going back to the question that you asked, like, how do you go from an Amish community and the things that you were taught to being an entrepreneur? And there's actually a lot of really, really good entrepreneurship tools that the Amish teach and that we learn. But also there's some incredibly smart Amish people in business. And when I look back to like what it taught me, is it taught me structure, it taught me discipline, it taught me accountability, it taught me how to have a work ethic, like all of those things. And you need all of those things if you want to be a successful entrepreneur. And so the end of the summer of 2020, I hired my first business coach, and I said, I want to start my own online business. And I was like, the only way that I can be successful with this is if I hire someone right out of the gate that teaches me the groundwork of what I need to do. So that was my first business coach right out of the gate. She helped me launch my business. And I committed in August of 2020, I said, by the end of the year of 2020, December, I'm going to stop my in-person training and I'm going to go fully online to just having my own business. And I was like, I have no idea how I'm going to support and make enough money to do this, but I'm going to do it. But because I decided that I was going to do it and then I committed to it, I made it happen. And so there's something that I teach, is I call it the secret sauce, is
love it.
There's steps that within these actions. And so like you can decide that you want something, but if you don't commit and take action, that decision means nothing. It's the same thing with a goal. You can say, well, my goal is to make $10,000 a month or whatever it is that you want to do. But if you don't commit to the action steps that you need to take in order to get there, that goal means nothing.
Yeah. Who do you need to become? Right? I always say, who do you need to become to make $10,000 a month? Yeah. What does it take? And then you need to become that person. And I think it's also super important to set an end goal. Like, I don't think an end date to your goal. I don't even think you realize when you said that, but it's like, well, it was 2020. And then by December, I said, I'm going to be doing this, right? So I think that's the other very, very important element to the secret sauce, right? Is not just knowing what you want, but by when.
Yep.
Right? Because if you don't give an end date, like if you say, I want to make $10,000 a month, okay, you might make it when you're 75 years old. Like you need to do it. Like you need to say, I want to make $10,000 a month by December of this year. So I need to do this, and this today, and this week, and this month, and this year to get to my goal. So how do you make money today?
So I have my online coaching business. I currently, it's called Undiet You. So if you go to undietyou.com, that's where you can see a lot of the information of what I offer. But I primarily focus in on hormones, thyroid, inflammation. Most people that come to me, they want to lose weight, but they have to get to the root cause of what is actually going on with their health first. So I'm a board certified functional nutrition practitioner. So I run labs for people. So what everybody that comes in and works with me, we're going to do in-depth lab work to find out what is really going on internal and get to the root cause. Most people that come to me have tried going to the doctor, tried to get answers, and they're not getting anywhere. It's this like vicious hamster wheel. And truthfully, like our medical system is so broken, which is why our like obesity levels in our sickness epidemic is so high, is because doctors are taught how to diagnose and prescribe. They're not taught how to help someone heal and get to the
to figure out what's causing it. They thought about how to put a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And every Band-Aid has a side effect, and then you're going down the path of you might solve this problem, causes another, and then it's just a never ending.
Yep.
I'm huge on not ever taking any medication, and my kids are not vaccinated. I don't talk much about it right out to the world, because either way, I lose 50% of my followers as soon as I open my mouth, right?
It's so controversial, but yeah, that's my main business. And then I am also the CEO and co-founder of a non-toxic beauty brand as well.
So guys, you can find Lizzie's website on misscommando.com. Those are her products. So these are, describe them super quick.
So these are non-toxic, chemical-free products. So we have a goat soap, and we have a goat lotion. Honestly, it's like the best lotion you'll ever use in your entire life. And then we have also a goat lotion face cream. And I've actually had people that started using it, and they've been Estee Lauder users for like 10 years. And they're like, oh, it's way better than that. So I have people that are throwing out their expensive face creams, and they're going for hours. And it's because it's such high quality. It's very, very important for me to have a clean, non-toxic product, but it's still effective. And that's what this is. And then we also have something called a Commando Balm, which is a shea butter balm. And this is deeply, deeply hydrating, but there's 5 ingredients in it. So one of the
How
things
do you use the balm?
The balm you use for like dry, cracked heels, dry hands. Some people use it because they like it to use it for total body, like a lotion. But a lot of people are using it for those like troubled areas. One of the things that is really helpful with these products too is like people that struggle with like eczema and rosacea, psoriasis. It's been incredibly helpful for that as well. So Miss Commando is the women's line, and then we have a men's line called Commando Outdoor. And so that's where we're getting in like the men's scents. And one of the things that sets this product apart from like a lot of products is when I started this, I didn't want a clean, healthy product that is stored in terrible plastic. So what we did is we brought in hemp fiber biodegradable plastics and containers. So this is not just for our skin. We are doing it to store our products in very healthy items, and they're so cool looking too. Like they're just amazing.
Yeah, I looked at the products last night. I can't wait. I'm going to order some and try them. I have one of my boys. He always has his elbows super dry. Right, so I can't wait I'm gonna get the one for him and try it
out. So we're hitting it in multiple areas where it's like, hey, we're creating a non-toxic, really clean, healthy product. And what makes it so effective is we're not putting in a bunch of preservatives and chemicals and additional items that take away the benefit of goat milk and the healthy products that we're using. So we also only use really high quality oils. So we're using like coconut oil, vitamin E, olive oil, things like that. That is like when you read our label, you're like, I can understand everything that's in there.
I love that.
Simplicity. And I call it like simple like the Amish, but badass like a commando. Like we're gotta keep it simple and basic. And that's why they're so effective.
So everyone, you can find Lizzie's products on misscommando.com, and also you can work with her on undietyou.com. So if you need help with your health, with your physical being, with your weight, it's undietyou.com. You are a published author, so tell us about that.
So I am a published author of Amish Renegade, and this is the anthropology of an Amish girl turned global CEO. And this is my memoir. This is like me talking about what was it like to live there and that transition of living there into thinking about leaving, finally leaving, and then what was life like after, and how do I build from basically I had $20 in my pocket when I left. That's it. I had nothing else. How do I build from that to a multi-6-figure business to becoming a global CEO?
I love it. I can't wait. Where can they find it? On Amazon?
Amazon. You have on Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
Okay, so everyone, you can find it on Amazon under Amish Renegade. And then Lizzie, when people want to reach out to you besides your websites that we already shared, what is the best way to get direct access to you, to communicate with you?
Yeah, you can message me I get a lot of messages on my Instagram. I'm pretty active on there. And then also Lizzie at undietyou.com is my email. You can reach out to me there as well. And I'm also pretty high on TikTok. Like a lot of people find me on TikTok as well. My TikTok's actually higher than I have almost 400,000 on there versus Instagram. But it's so interesting when you look at the difference between a TikTok audience and an Instagram audience. It's quite different. Right. But I've been able to build both of them, so it's awesome.
That's awesome. So you can find Lizzie at Lizzie Ens. It's spelled LIZZIEENS _wellness. So it's Lizzie Ens _wellness. So Lizzie, what is maybe a lesson that it took you the longest to learn?
Not to please people or be a people pleaser. Yep.
Okay.
So I went through a massive, realization just a couple years ago that I was a perpetual people pleaser. And by doing so, I was dying on the inside because I was making sure that everybody else was like happy and good and there was no conflict and putting out the fires, but yet I was dying on the inside. And just since going through my divorce and like really growing into a new version of myself, I realized just how toxic that was and that it's okay for me to make sure that I'm taken care of first so that I can better take care of the other people that I love in my life.
Yeah, I learned it on an airplane, right? They always tell you to put your mask on first.
Yep.
Because if you're not alive, if you're not healthy, if you're not good, how are you going to have the energy to take care of others, right? So you're always first, and then you have the energy to take care of others, the ones who, can be in your life, because we do not have to be taking care of everybody. Some people don't deserve a spot.
Yeah, and the thing is I always tell people, it's like sometimes that can sound selfish because you're like, oh, it's all about you. And it's like, no, it's actually about filling your cup first and making sure that you're taken care of so that you can show up better for the people that you love. It's not selfish to take care of yourself first.
Yeah.
Because that only means you can show up better for the rest of the people that you want to take care of. So
exactly. Yeah. Well, maybe share a lesson. We talked about unlearning things. Maybe share one thing that you had to definitely unlearn from being raised in the Amish community.
Let me think about this for a bit. There's so many of them. One thing that I had to unlearn. Oh, I know what it is.
Go.
We're growing up in the Amish community. You can also become a perpetual workaholic. So for me, like, there's like good aspects to that, but I had to learn that it is also okay for me to rest and take time off. And by doing so, it allows me to become more creative and to show up for myself and the people that I love better. And it shows up in my business and it shows up in my personal life, but it took me a long time to get there.
Did it make you feel, it's probably a cultural thing because I always feel the same way. Like if I stop and like, let's say I enjoy, I don't know, a TV show or just reading a book, just like doing nothing, right?
Yep.
I always feel like I'm lazy.
Yep. 100%.
So there's only go or sleep. Because if I'm sleeping, then I'd be like, well, I was sleeping. I can't work while I'm sleeping. Right. So it is I think it has to do with the culture upbringing. I guess I never realized, but it's the same for me. Even my name is Gogo, right? I'm always go. And if I'm not doing something or thinking or building or using my brain for something, right, then I feel like I'm lazy.
Yeah, and I think that
not lazy in a comfortable sense of word, but lazy in the negative sense of word, as in I'm wasting my time. I'm wasting my life. Yeah.
When I think that can be dangerous because now we only find our worth and our value in our work and in doing things. And it's very, very important to understand and know and believe in our own ability that your worth is not in the things that you're doing. Your value is not in the things that you're doing. There's more to you than that. But that is a very hard thing to unlearn when you come from a culture of like work. Like I remember my mom said one time, she said this to my twin and I. We were like her best workers. Like we just got shit done. And she didn't have to hound us for it. She didn't even have to tell us. Like we just knew what to do. And she said to us one day, because we were also the most troublemakers, like we caused the most trouble. And one day she goes, if you guys would do everything else as good as you do your work, you would be perfect. She had no idea how that affected me because now all of a sudden I'm just going to outwork everybody else so I can get her approval. Even if I mess up and I create trouble, she's still going to love me because I show up over here. So that is what tied me and my value to my work is when she said that, because I was like, oh, she's going to approve of me. And that was one of the hardest things for me to unlearn.
Oh, well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your knowledge and sharing your life story with us to help other humans who potentially going through something similar, right? To learn the lessons without having to learn it on their own skin. That's the idea with the Gogopreneur episodes, is that I learned so much through other people's stories, with the idea that I don't have to go through the same thing to learn the same life lesson. Right. So thank you so much for sharing yours and helping the next entrepreneur to not have to learn those life lessons on their own skin. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, Lizzie.
Ready to elevate your mindset? Now it's time for What Would Gogo Do?
Can you describe a time when you failed and what you learned from that experience? So in the next episode of What Would Gogo Do, here's the question. Can you describe a time when you failed and what you learned from that experience? Oh my gosh. Failures are just lessons that you haven't learned yet, because as soon as you learn it, you're never going to do it again. So there isn't such a thing as a failure. It's just a lesson that, oops, I didn't know that. Now I know better, right? So I don't look at things as failures, but the first thing that pops in my mind, okay, let me back it up one more step. Failures is really when you just failed and you didn't get up and you stopped. You didn't get up. It's on you. There isn't such a thing as failure in my mind. If you keep trying, if you keep adjusting what you are doing and how you are doing to get the end result that you want, there isn't such a thing as failure. So that's that. But here's a story that I learned from, right? So about 3 years ago, my partner and I had a business partner at the time, and I also learned from that. I'm not the partnering kind, but that's a whole other post. So my business partner and I started a TC company, a transaction coordination company. That company required about 8 hours of my time. And in the end of the month, I got about $4,000. And I was like, I'm sorry, but $4,000, I don't work 8 hours for $4,000. At this point, I can't, because I'm losing money when my hourly rate is 2,000 some odd dollars an hour, right? So what I learned from that, I was like, it's not worth my time. I literally shut it down. I gave my book of business with an affiliate link to a company that this is what they do for a living, and they pay me a little bit every month. What I should have done, I should have sold the book of business. I should have sold that business for somebody who is more than happy to work 8 hours to make $4,000. That's what I should have done. I should have slowed down to realize, because for me, that 4,000 is not worth it. It's worth it for somebody else. And I should have sold that business, not closed it down. So that's what I learned. I consider that a failure, because really I could have sold that book of business for, like, I don't know, 10x, 7x, something. But I didn't. Next time, I will. That's my failure-ish kind of lesson. It's not a failure because I learned from it. I will never make that mistake again. Thanks for joining Gogopreneur. Keep that go-getter spirit alive. Until next time, go get 'em.